Good evening. My name is Jim Kello. Welcome to New Tracks, where mentors help modelers build. Thanks so much for coming this evening. I hope you enjoy it. If you're wondering why my head looks the way it does, I had a little surgery yesterday and I'm still getting over it. So it's a larger bandage than the one they had to use a couple of weeks ago. So hopefully they got it all this time. If you're new to the show, I hope you'll go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and register and subscribe. You'll get an email from the website. If you'll confirm that that is the correct email for you, then you're fully subscribed. You'll be eligible for our door prizes that we have. And you'll also get all of the login links to all the future shows. If you're able to, we'd appreciate it if you offer your help in running the shows and helping us produce the shows, or in being a presenter on the show. If you're interested in doing one of the kind of projects that we have, please let me know. You're most welcome, and I'd love to hear from you. I'd like now to turn to some of the build-alongs that we have coming up. We have a new one starting this evening with Rick and Marie Hunter of Hunterline, building an 81-foot trestle. Al Collins is offering a discount in addition to on his equipment, in addition to the great price that Rick and Marie Hunter are offering for the build-along modelers for this trestle. I understand there's 8 people that are building along with Rick and Marie tonight. And I really I appreciate your interest in it. And I know that you're going to learn a lot and have a lot of fun. Starting September the 22nd, Martin Brett Built, MMR, is going to build a Leadville Designs maintenance of way car. October the 13th, Jill Murphy starts building a LaBelle woodworking models of a business car in HO. October the 16th, Bill Davis is going to build a rail scale model of a tobacco barn. November the 6th, Dave Schultz is going to build an all-nation waffle side boxcar kit. And then we've got some others coming up. I scheduled the first one for next year the other day. That one will start the 5th of January. It's a new manufacturer. And I think you're really going to be surprised at it. Our next My Build segment is coming up the 22nd of September with Chris Course being the moderator of it. If you're interested in participating, and I hope you do, if you'll send Chris an email, he'll include you in the PowerPoint presentation that he prepares, and you'll be able to talk about your model as he shows it. Or if you're unable to be at the show, he'll read the caption that you send with your model to him for the PowerPoint. Again, send it to Chris Course, and he'll make sure that you're included in the build, the My Build. If you've got a modeling question of any kind, whether you're having a problem with a model you're building, whether you just need some advice generally on modeling, if you'll let us know, we'll try to get you an answer from one of the people on the show or somebody that we personally know. There's a form on our website. If you'll fill the form out, it's easy to do, and send it to us. I guarantee you'll get a reply from me, and we'll do everything that we can to get your question answered. We've started offering door prizes. I'm a little frustrated because the door prize for August the 21st, which Coastman Scenic Products offered, was not claimed by the winner. The winner was Russell McClure, and Russell evidently missed the show and did not reply, so he missed winning the prize that night. The prize on August the 28th, offered by Nick Santo, which was 3 different ones of his Dakota buddies, also went unclaimed by James Drake. And so that prize was not collected. Tonight, we have a special prize. If you've been following the show, you saw David Rarick build this engine house out of card on the show that was designed by Paul Egbert. And David is donating this as the door prize tonight. It's in HO scale. So the prize is going to be offered. You have to be a subscriber to be eligible to win. You can either be watching the show now live, or you can watch it later on our YouTube channel, New Tracks Modeling. I will be talking about the code that you're going to need to include in your email to me in order to claim your prize. I'll be announcing the winner of the prize shortly, as well as the winner's code that has to be included. And I need you to send me an email to jimkellow1@gmail.com, JIMKELLOW, numeric 1@gmail.com. And in that email, you need to include the code that I will give you shortly and your address and full name, so that David, I will send the email then that you send me to David, and he will then send you the prize of the card model he built of the engine house. I really do appreciate David doing this. It's a really gracious gift. I also should mention that the email that you send me must be sent from the same email address that you subscribe to our website with. That way we know that you're eligible to win the prize and that you are a subscriber to the show. So I hope we have a winner tonight. But I am frustrated that for the last two shows, we have not had a winner. So if the person that I name shortly does not respond within the 24-hour period with the information needed in an email to me, then what I'm going to do is next Wednesday, I'm going to offer the same model only to viewers who are on the show that night at that time. I'll have a separate code for that, and the winner of the model at that point will be the first person email that I get that includes that code that I will announce on that show. So, and after that, frankly, if that's the way that the show has to go, then I'm not sure that continuing the door prizes makes a lot of sense. I'm frustrated, as I say, that we've done 3 door prizes and 2 of them have not been won or not been claimed by the people who won the prizes. So I'm doing this one tonight, and I can't, again, because this is not a manufacturer. This is a hand-built model by David Rarick that he's willing to donate to a modeler on the show because he is not an HO scale model railroader. He's an N-scale model railroader. But he built this in HO because it was easier for people to see what he was doing, and he could get more detail in the model than if you tried to build it in his scale of N-scale. So that's how I'm going to do this. So I'll be announcing the winner of this shortly, and the code that winner will need to claim it tonight. But if in 24 hours I don't get it claimed, then next Wednesday on that show, it will be going to a person who is on that show, not viewing it later. It has to be either on YouTube or Zoom next Wednesday night. That will be the winner that I announce then. So with that said, I'd like to turn to Paul Thompson for our quick tip of the evening. Paul, welcome.
Great, thank you, Jim. Let me just get my screen share up here. And here we go. Okay, as we all know, everybody buys shirts and socks and all that kind of nonsense. And what I've got here is, you'll notice there's a tag. And where's my little arrow? What we've got when you pull the tag off is you've got these, I hope everybody can see this. There's a little plastic tie, I guess you'd call it. And these things are actually quite useful. Some of them are round, some of them are flat. This one happens to be flat and very stiff. Some of them are stretchy. But as you can see, this hand pump on the back of this pickup truck was built out of one of these things. In other scales, you can use them for car aerials. So the thing I'm looking at here right now is don't throw these things away. They make all kinds of very useful little gadgets, and your imagination is the limit. And that, guys, is my tip for the night. Thanks very much.
No, thank you. That's pretty useful. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us, Paul. And I might mention that you're getting a lot of visibility of these on YouTube. And between the people that are on the show and the number of people that are viewing this on YouTube, you're approaching 100 views on just the short time that you do these quick tips. And I think that's great. I hope we get more than that, but I think that's a pretty darn good representation of the modelers on the show.
Great, thank you, Jim.
So now I'd like to turn to our special segment tonight, and it's a build along with Rick and Marie Hunter, building the trestle that Hunterline produces. So Rick, Marie, welcome.
Hi, Jim. Thanks a lot.
Yes,
we're
sir.
here. I don't know how long we're here because we still don't have our new system yet, but if we disappear, blame it on the weather or something, okay? I am Rick Hunter, and this is my fantastic wife, Maureen. We own Hunterline in Cambridge, Ontario. You've probably seen us at a show somewhere or other because we do a lot of shows. What we want to accomplish in the next 6 weeks, we're taking you from opening the package right up to the finished product. And this is what we are doing. This is an 81-foot trestle. And this happens to be the pile version. So it's actually round posts. Now the round posts are actually basswood. We're one of the few in the world that have round basswood. The other one is, I can reach it, is a frame. And the difference is this is a square post that sits on a wooden sill, which would sit on rock, concrete, cribbing, something solid. So the other one, the pile, it's piled into the ground. So it depends on where you're going to use it, which one you're going to use. Like if you're up in the mountains and a lot of rock around, you're not going to be able to pile it into the ground. So you would use a frame. A lot of bridges that we have seen are combinations, depending on what the base underneath is. The era, these were actually used a lot in the Civil War, and they're actually used a lot today. We see them everywhere on our journeys. A good example would be the coastline, going up the West Coast, down in California and so on. The pile bridge is everywhere, exactly the same as that, a 6 posts. There's 4 posts, 5 posts, 6 posts, 8 posts. There's many different posts. Ours is a 6. Now, the beauty of this kit is the only pieces that are cut to length are the ties. Everything else is full length. So if you want to change any measurement you want, go ahead. If you want to make it shorter or taller in the middle and smaller on the sides, you're limited to what the wood is that you have. Why a trestle? Why is a trestle being used? Okay, the word trestle is believed to have come from the word transom. And the transom is from spanning from one point to another point for anything, for a house, for a window or door, anything. It's called a transom. And that's where they believe that trestle came from. The trestle can be any length, any height, and most important, any shape. You take any of the howls or the Warren Trusts and all that stuff, you have to have an approach to get everything straight before you enter and go off. With a trestle, no, everything goes. Some of the big trestles that we've been on, a lot of them are in a curve or in an S even, but it doesn't matter the shape, anything will fit. Now, Maureen is going to take us through just a preliminary one. We can't do everything. This project is going to have a lot of homework to do. In our instructions, we have our regular instructions. the history and so forth, and all the, that's backwards. How about that? So, and then we have another set of how to build it on a curve. I didn't know we were in the mirror. Okay. The curve ones, we have done this so many times, build it along with people, and they always say, I want to build it on a curve. So we are one of the first to actually document how to do the curve. We don't care what the radius is. If you follow our method through, you will always get the curve that you want, not the curve that they want you to have. So Maureen, I'm going to switch cameras now, and Maureen's going to start the process here. The first week is going to be the most boring one you have because it's distressing the wood. So let me just switch screens here, switch cameras. All right.
Okay. All right, so I guess it's my turn. I'm just going to take you through what I do when I open up the kit. You'll see that you've got all kinds of packages of lumber, and they're all nicely labeled with the size of lumber that you have. Okay, and you can see that on your big template drawing. There's a bill of materials. There's a bill of materials at the top left-hand corner. So that'll tell you exactly how much wood you have, the sizes, and what those sizes are used for.
I might add that all our drawings are actual templates. You build everything right on the drawing.
So what I usually do then is distress all my wood. You can do, there's different options here. You can take all your lumber and distress it all at the same time. Just make sure that you keep the sizes separate and you put them back into their envelopes to the appropriate size. You can do it that way and then stain it all together. Or you can just, you know, if you're just doing one piece of the project, which would be the tie stringer assembly, you might just want to distress all that lumber and stain it and put it together before you go on to the next part of the build. Or you could cut all your lumber to size and then distress it and then stain it. But I prefer to just go at it and distress all the lumber, put it back into the envelope, then stain it, and you've got it all ready to go. The only thing with that is that at the end of the project, you're going to have to go back and touch up all your cut ends, but that's so okay.
You're going to have a lot of homework with this one.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you how I distress. I use a fine tooth razor saw. This one is, I think, 42 teeth to the inch, but you can use whatever you're familiar with. Some people use a stiff wire brush like that. And I'm sure there's probably other tools that you could use as well, but I like this. So what I do is I have a little cutting mat and I take all my lumber and I distress it on all sides. And you have to put a fair amount of pressure. You can take your razor saw and just, you can make little curves in the wood, do all sides. A fair amount of pressure. You want to see that grain because it really accepts the stain so much better. So some good pressure.
I don't know if you saw that little sign, but it just came up on us that we have an unstable internet connection. Whatever that means.
So just distress all sides. I had most of my ties done here prior. So I've got my ties done, and I'm going to take another package here. I've got my 12 by 14s, and I'm going to distress them.
So I think in this package, I think there's 9 different sizes of wood. One of the advantages of using strip wood is you can use multiple sizes of wood. All our wood is Mount Albert scale lumber, which was originated by Al Collins, who's on the screen there somewhere. And It's just the best wood made. It's the most accurate made.
You can also take your razor saw if you want and put little knots in it. Put little holes here and there, maybe. Make it look like a little knot. Again, just make sure you've got a good, you can see that grain popping up. And do all sides.
So as far as we want to get tonight is to distress all the wood and to do the base coat staining. That way, next session, next week, we can get right into the actual building. But it's up to you whether you want to distress and stain all the wood now or just what you need for the tie stringer assembly. Now, we never cut the wood first. We always distress and stain the full length and then cutting and then touch up the ends later.
Yeah. So when you're done with that envelope of lumber, just make sure you put it back in the right size. And here's another little one here I'll do. These are my 6x6s. I think you can see the idea is just putting a fair amount of pressure, get that grain in there. And if you go over it twice, that's okay, which I think I just did.
Just going to talk a minute on our stains. Many years ago, we developed all our own stains, and they're a 70% isopropyl alcohol base. We call it weathering mix. That's kind of what the bottle looks like. And we have 45 colors on the market. We ship them so far to the continental US and Canada. We're having a lot of trouble sending an airmail to a lot of places because it's just too costly. Problem with our weathering mix now is it's considered a dangerous material, so it has to be shipped as a dangerous material. And all the fellows who just received their packets this past few weeks, that's why it's packed up the way it is. It has to be in a sealed bag, wrapped in something that would absorb it, and then cushioned all over the place. And special stickers on the outside of the box.
So that's all the lumber I'm going to do to show you how to distress. I think you've probably got the idea. So now I'm going to just move on to the staining.
Now you need to pick the color that you want for your base. It's usually the lighter color that you have.
Yeah. So I'm gonna use a medium brown as my base. Give your bottle a good shake. Make sure you've got your gloves on and you've got a disposable dish. And just pour a little bit in there. Now to save these bottles from tipping over on you, you can get yourself a big roll of duct tape or big tape and set the bottle. Where is it here? You can see that. If you set it inside the roll of tape, it'll prevent it from tipping over. A bigger one, duct tape would probably be best. But put your weathering mix in a disposable container and get your gloves on. Use a cheap brush. I just use a dollar store brush to put this stain on, and you don't have time to rub it off. So you're just you're applying this very, very quickly, haphazardly. Don't spend a lot of time in doing it. I just put my wood right into the container. Some fellows will have a long tube or a longer container that you can just lay the wood right in and then just pick it out, which works really well.
So we find that using gravity helps in this process.
Yeah, so just just set it in the dish and start. You can do a couple at a time. And of course, if you want a darker color than what you're getting, just put another coat on. This will dry lighter, of course. So I've got my first coat on there, and I'm just going to put one coat on this. I don't want it too dark. And then just lay it on a paper towel to let it dry. And then I usually take my little envelope that says 6 by 6, and I lay it beside that lumber. And then I'll take my 12 by 14s. I had those distressed as well. And I will do the same thing.
One of the things we want you to note is it only takes a few seconds. It takes longer to distress it than it does to stain it.
And if you've got a long tube that you can just lay the wood in, it's much quicker. Just turn it the other way in.
Rick, is there a difference in the coloring of the stain that you would use if you're modeling an East Coast versus a West Coast?
There's a lot to say for that because there's different woods, like the ones in the West Coast were probably redwoods or some type of cedars, where in the East Coast, it might be a different color wood. So you can't say that browns are in both and grays are in both, because it doesn't really matter. It's how the sun reacts to everything.
Got it.
Like pine would do different than the oak, which would do different than redwood.
Got it.
So
thank you.
So it doesn't hurt to do if you're doing a certain area. It doesn't hurt to do just look at a couple pictures to see what intensity it is and what the basic color is.
So those are finished, and I'm going to lay them on the paper towel with the envelope beside them. I know you can't see that, but I'm going to do the ties, and what I'd like to do with the ties is use 3 different colors, just to give some variety on that stringer tie assembly. So I'm going to use medium brown as my little lighter, and I've got a dark brown here. I'm going to put a little bit of dark brown into another container.
Just remember what's in what container, so when you put it back in the bottle, you got the right one in the right one.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I'm feeling like I want lots of dark tonight. I don't know why. And the last one, I'm going to put tie brown. So I've got medium brown, dark brown, and tie brown.
Because we do so many shows, we're on the road a lot. We've done a lot of walking of rails and bridges and so on. And we've tried to establish a color, and there just is not a given color. So we do this 3-color method and then just randomly put them on. And we'll show you later how they all cohere, how you join them, that it looks like one structure instead of a bunch of little structures.
So you can see I just placed a handful, just a varied amount, it doesn't matter. And you can take your brush and just kind of stir them around to cover them with the stain. If you want them really, really dark, leave them sit in there for quite a while. If you don't want them so dark, pull them quickly.
Don't worry about the brush in different colors.
Yeah.
It just adds a little bit of variance that really doesn't matter.
So they're all soaking in there. If you've got tiny parts, I use one of these metal sieves, and you can put your tiny parts in the sieve and then just kind of dunk them in your stain and pop them out onto a paper towel. Works really well. So then I've got my paper towel. See,
so these ties are not like the king post ties because they were different lengths and so on. A general rule of thumb is on a bridge, the ties are 10 foot. Like usually a main line is an 8-foot tie or an 8-foot tie. But on a bridge, it's usually 10 foot. Now, what you will find with this is that this design has what's called a refuge platform on it, which holds a rain barrel. So if you look at your picture of it, it has that little platform on it. If you can see there, you can see the little platform with the little barrel. So what I'm saying there is you're given 3 extra long ties, and those extra long ties are for that little platform. You'll see when we get to the assembly.
You can take your ties out with you can use a tweezer, you can just use your gloved hand, whatever you prefer, which I think I'm going to do because it's taking me too long to pick them out. You can just pop them on the paper towel mixed in with the other ones that you already got there. It doesn't matter because you're just going to mix them all up when you put them on the stringers anyway. And then my last batch are really dark. That was the tie brown, and they've been in there for a couple minutes. There, so I think I've got them all out. So just spread them out. You have to really let those dry nicely before you would ever start to glue. It doesn't take that long to dry.
It's usually 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the neat thing about using the alcohol. It dissipates really quick.
I don't know if you can see, but I think so. You can see the very different colors that we've got there.
And it will dry a little lighter than what you see.
Yeah. There. So just let them sit out and put your weathering mix back in your bottle.
Make sure you get the right bottle.
Yeah, if you've got a little funnel, I've kind of misplaced mine, but I used to have a little funnel that I could use to get the stain back in the bottle.
We're not showing that on camera in case she misses.
Yes. So I think that's about it. Can you think of anything else, Rick?
I think that's about it. If you really want to do the curve, use the curve instruction, go over it a whole bunch of times so you know exactly what the process is. We're just using our S scale. This is an S scale trestle, so it's nice and big so you can see it on the camera. And you know, if you want to do the curve, go for it. But I would suggest, if you're new at this, not to do the curve yet. That's the next project.
If you want these to dry a little quicker, just take them off of that wet paper towel and stick them on another dry one or some newsprint, and they'll dry a bit quicker.
What we want you to do for homework, yeah, right, homework, is distress all the wood and color it in your base color, which would be the lighter of the colors.
Clean up with the weathering mix is easy. You just, I don't even usually wash my brushes or do anything with them. I just wipe them on the paper towel, and I clean up my dishes with a paper towel. You can use alcohol, of course, to clean your brushes if you want to.
I think some of Maureen's brushes are probably 8 or 10 years old and have never been cleaned.
I don't know if you should be saying that. But I just wipe it off on a paper towel till I don't see any color. Or get your alcohol out. There.
I think that's the end of this session. Remember, your homework is to distress all the wood and to stain your base color on it. You probably should allow, what, 3 to 4 hours of just doing that?
Probably, yeah.
So if you want to keep up with the class, you got your work cut out for you before next Wednesday. So we hope to have this completed in session 6, which is quicker than what we're doing for the King Post, but it's not as difficult cuts and so on it. We will be using Al Collins sander, Ultimation sander, with the repeater on it. So I don't know if Al's going to give us a little teaching method on that, or if we're just going to show you. It's going to be a big saving because it repeats the same angle over and over and over again. What I have to find out is what the angle is. So I have some homework to do too. Anything else you can think of for this session?
Yeah, just make sure once your wood is all stained and dry that you put them back in those envelopes with the right size. Okay, just like that.
Okay, we're good?
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Rick or Marie?
Yeah, Rick, this is Greg. You had mentioned about putting the stain back in the same bottles, and that made me curious. Have you ever heard of anybody mixing your stains to get something different?
Yes. One fellow used our barn red and our golden brown, and he mixed those together. And I don't know what you'd call the color, but it was entirely different, and it's one of a kind.
I'd call it golden apple.
So, something like that, yeah. It was kind of a neat, how can you say, golden effect, okay? Which is sometimes what you find, especially in the West, out in the deserts and so on.
Yeah, definitely. You could mix any of the colors. The only one that would be a little bit different would be any one of our pigments. We've got the 6 pigments now. So they're the ones that are a little bit thicker. So, you know, you just have to really, really make sure you shake them up well. Yeah.
What are the pigment colors, Marie?
They're cottage white, shale, tan, cement, sky blue. Is that 5 or 6? Is that 5?
Our new one is tan. We've just put tan on our website. One of the things about the pigments is that we developed it so that a light stain could go over top of a dark stain. And one of the things we've been experimenting with is doing prefab ties. And you can use the pigments on that, and it just gets rid of that brown, because all those ties are embossed, that there is a grain in them, but you can't see it. So that's why we've developed the tan. The tan gives it that little brownie effect. So all those little cracks and crevices actually show up. You can use you
can use the cement or the shale.
The shale, yeah.
Yeah, for that as well.
But that's a different application. It's not like a thin thing. It's actually a paint that's in it. So it works like paint.
Now, you wouldn't use that on a trestle then?
You could use the white if you wanted to put like a snow effect on the trestle. Because it's a pigment, it goes on the color it is. So if you want to add a little bit of whiteness to it, like it's great for rocks and stuff like that too. But our big point that we use is when you have mortar lines to do on brick or stonework. You put it on and you rub it off right away, and it leaves all the mortar lines. And it's just an excellent looking way of doing it. And the point is, it only takes 2 or 3 seconds to do it.
Yeah, the pigments are the only ones of our stains that you could apply and rub off. The other ones are too thin. And with the alcohol, it really is absorbed quite quickly. There's no reason really to wipe it off.
We should add to that our our website is under construction, and it's just nearing the final get the bugs out of it, because we do have some bugs in it. But that should be up and running pretty soon, and then we can start to take control of it again and make the images better and the descriptions better and so on. But we're just waiting on our webmaster to get his end done. And we hope to have a new computer. They say it's going to be in at the end of September, but I don't know. I'm amazed that we got through this whole session without a bleep. Okay, guys, we'll see you next week.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, before we go to our next guest, who is Clark Kooning, MMR, and Bob Farquhar, who are going to give us some great pointers and help us with spray painting, I want to announce tonight's door prize winner. Prize, again, is being provided by David Rarick, and it is the HO scale card model of the engine house that Paul Egret designed, that Dave built recently on our show. It's an HO scale model, and the winner is CP Rail numeric 1. That's all the information that I have for that individual. I don't have his name. So it is C is in Charlie, P is in Paul, Rail, R-A-I-L, numeric 1, and that is the name. Now, that person needs within 24 hours of the show, the end of this show, to send me an email to Jim Kello, numeric 1, at gmail.com. That's JIMKELLOW, numeric 1 at gmail.com. And the prize code that he needs to include in that email is RDPE91. So the code is R as in Ralph, D as in dog, P as in Peter, E as in eat, 91. And he has to also include his name and mailing address so that David Rarick can send him his prize of the card engine house that Dave built on the show. So congratulations to CP Rail 1 and Dave Rarick. Thank you so much for your prize. I really do appreciate you donating the prize for this evening. And now I'd like to turn to Clark Kooning and Bob Farquhar so that we can learn how to do the best spray painting that we possibly can. Clark, Bob, thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
I'm going to start off here. There's going to be two of us doing this. It's going to be myself presenting basic airbrushing, and then Clark's going to be doing techniques. Basically, I'm going to do the slides, and Clark is going to sing all the words. Is that right, Clark?
Was this tonight?
Okay, I'm going to share screen here.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, and here we go. So a few weeks ago, somebody wrote in that they want to get some information about airbrushing. That's what this is all about. So as I said, I'm going to be doing the basics on this. And I'm going to start off with, why would you want to do airbrushing in the first place? So basically the paint, come on here. The painting is smoother, and it's a thinner coat of paint, actually. Doesn't hide details. Actually, with an airbrushing, you into hard to reach places, and weathering is fast. The only con about this thing is the cost involved, because they're not cheap. So there's an example of a building I did, and this it doesn't hide the brick detail, and I had to use a lot of masking on this building, but I'll talk about that later. And this one's an example of the detail. These rivets are quite fine on this bridge, but they show quite clearly with airbrushing. And here's an example for weathering. That's quick and dirty weathering. So what do you need? Of course, is an airbrush. You need air supply of some sort, air compressor, or there's other ways of doing that. Air regulator, you have to control the amount of pressure that is going through the airbrush. A moisture trap, that's pretty much a necessity because there's so much moisture in an air. And when you compress it, and there's actually the water is in the airstream. So you have to get that cleaned out of there. Spray booth, possibly, better to have that. And respirator, eye protection maybe, and the airbrush cleaner. And nice to have on hand, like Lees and Susan, part holders, paper towels, cleaner stuff, and gloves, an airbrush holder. So there's a terminology here. There are external and internal mixes. There's an example. These two here are examples of external airbrushing, external mix. The air comes in this side. This button controls the air, either on or off. The paint would be sucked up through here for a siphon feed. And the amount of paint is controlled by this little knob in here. And actually, when the air goes past this part, the tip here, actually sucks up the paint and then mixes on the external here. That's external mix. This one here is another example. There's actually no paint control at all. It just sucks it up there and sprays out from here. And the only problem with that, you can get some blotching of paint and stuff like that. So that's not the best airbrushes to have. Internal mix, that's the most common one to use. Of course, the air is in here, controlled by the button here. And paint is getting, this example is siphon up through here, and the mixing internally in the airbrush in here. So by the time it comes out, this end has a nice fine spray. Got here talk about single action and dual action. So single action is this example here. This is where the button is either on or off. In this example, this is dual action here because you press down for the air and you pull back for getting the amount of paint you want. So I'll explain that a bit later, but what it does then is it actually gets a hold of the needle and pulls the needle back. And then depending on how much you pull it back is how much paint will be siphoned up through here. And there's a bottom feed or siphon feed this way, or gravity feed. You see the paint cups up here. This was attached permanently to the airbrush. Needle sizes, the only one you have to really worry about is the medium sizing. Most of them come with a medium. But if you want to be able to do inks and dyes, you can still use a medium, but you cut down your air pressure quite a bit. It'd be hard to do a heavier like heavier paints and lacquers and so on with a medium. You have to maybe get a heavy needle size. Now, different manufacturers here. Of course, Badger's a common one. Pash is another one. Desters come out with this one a while ago, so only a few years ago. And Iwata, I like them the better of them all because Iwata is one of the few that has chrome interior on here. So paint does not stick to chrome. Whereas the Badger ones have brass pretty much on the inside, and paint does stick to brass quite easily. So this brush is easier to clean at the end of a spray session. There's a breakdown of the typical airbrush. So air coming up through, air supply coming up through here. This button here pushes down on plunger, and it releases the air, and it comes up through this little channel up and through here, and right to by the tip. And this one's a dual action. So you push down for the air. And when you pull back, it's attached to this little clip here, and actually it pulls the needle away from the end, and that releases the paint that comes down through here, and mixes it right in here. So get a nice fine spray. Now you're going to need hose supply or air for the air compressor. Sorry, air brush. A lot of cheap ones come with a coiled plastic hose. Just throw that in the garbage because it's useless. It'll kink. Doesn't last very long. Snags on everything. Braided hose is what braided hose will last you a lifetime, and but they are more expensive. And when I got my airbrushes years ago, Quick Connects were not available. They are available today. So what you can do is with one airbrush, you can maybe have 5 airbrushes and have 5 Quick Connects on them, and then one Quick Connect on the end of this braided hose. So only you need one hose for all your airbrushes type of thing. So air compressor for modeling, I would just suggest just getting small air compressors. Now, this is a Harbor Freight American pricing. This Canadian example here for the sizing. You don't really need a medium size or larger, because unless you're going to be doing, for example, a nailer or other things, other type of air tools around the house. But these will work fine for you. And there's another example for the bigger ones. Now, the problem with the big ones here, mine one I have here is a 30-gallon. It doesn't take us long to fill. Just 60 gallon, take about 10 minutes to fill this thing. And so I've been using it for air tools for my cars and stuff like that. So another option here is using what's called an air pig. You go to the gas station and you fill this thing with air. It's good for 135 pounds pressure. And this is one example is 5 gallons in the sizing. And then you can use it for good, probably half an hour or so, spraying at home. So then you don't have to buy an air compressor, but you have to run back and forth to the gas station. Now, this example, these ones here just came out a little while ago. This is mine. It's a cordless air brush. And this part here is the air compressor. It's built in. It's powered by USB port that puts a power supply into there. And it's good for about an hour. And this is a dual action airbrush. And of course, pull down on the air compressor, starts right away, and then pull back for the amount of paint you want to come in. This one here is a screw-on type air cup, and it comes also with a bigger one, about 5 times the size if you want to be doing a lot of painting. Now, if you're going to get one of these, check around, because this one here was the one that's recommended the most because it goes up to 25 pounds pressure, and you generally don't need more than that. But a lot of the other manufacturers are only good for 17 pounds as a maximum. And that's really weak. That means you're going to be really, really thin paint and be coating it 4 or 5 times to get a color to show nicely. And also, you have to make sure that it's a double action. A lot of them are single action airbrushes as well. So now this one, for example, I paid $170 for this Canadian. And a couple of days later, just for grins, went down to a Walmart site. I thought, Walmart will not have them. Sure enough, they do. Half the price. They're $79. 79 bucks Canadian, which is 30 bucks American. Anyway, so now talk about regulator air trap, water trap. There's an example of a regulator by itself and a water trap by itself. This is one I have, and that has both in one thing. Now, I said my air compressor is a 30-gallon one, and that puts up to 160 pounds if I want. What I use is the hot water pipe, and they're good for 180 pound pressure. So, and I've never had an issue for years and years. So if I need a full air supply, there it is there. If I want regulated, I go through here and then I put my airbrush into there. This connector here. And this controls the air pressure, and this is draining the water. This is the water trap is built in here as well. Now, spray booth, if you want to get one of them, blower 495 cubic feet per minute. That's ideal. Now, having arcing while the motor's running was an issue when you're using enamels or oil paints in the past, and now mostly we use acrylic, so it's not a big a deal. 4-inch ducted outside is ideal, and some good lighting. So these are other examples. They vary in price. This, for example, there's the Dayton blower here in this example. And of course, the larger they are, the more expensive they are. This is one I built. It's all made out of aluminum. And I have a Dayton blower in the back of this one, 4-inch piping outside the house. And I use this is a house dryer. You can vent this thing so it actually releases the exhaust from a dryer out back into the house. You're not losing the heat. So what I do is I leave it closed here, so in the cold winter you don't get the cold air rushing into the house all the time. That's all I use that for. And there were the plans for it. They came from the Model Railroader magazine. I'm sorry, I don't have what the year or the month it was in, but I think it was in the 70s, somewhere along the way. And those plans are available. If you want them, I can send them to you. Now, what I use here, this is a jug, a Javex jug. I just cut it open in here, put some sand in the bottom of it so it doesn't blow around. I can spray on there to start with. Excise spray I can throw into spray it into here, and then I can start cleaning the airbrushes. Lazy Susan, you can some other ones that you have holders and stuff like that. I think Paul Thompson showed a quick tip on a holder a few months ago, and there's an airbrush cleaner there, and then there's the pipe for going outside. Now, what I use the cleaning the airbrush, I spray out, either pour out what I have left over, or if I only have a little tiny bit left over, spray the rest of it into this jug. And then I use the first jar in here with the airbrush cleaner inside it and spray until it comes up clear. And then after use that a few times, and then I can use the another one, same idea, cleaner one, and just to finish it off, then of course a paper towel. Masking, like these N95 masks are very good for short, like 30 seconds, 1 minute at most. More than that, you want to get a decent air mask, and you actually don't need to use one of these best ones because unless you're going to be several hours. Now, if you can smell the paint while you're spraying, that means you're breathing it in as well. So you get a better respirator or spray outside, but be careful to be outside spraying because you could get the breeze blow back in your face again. So be aware of that. So paint types, this is going to quick and dirty, this one. This is what they used to be, the oils and enamels. They won't be they can't be sent by mail anymore. They do smell until they dry. They're messy to clean up, but they do last. Acrylic was what's around nowadays, easy to clean up. And some of them you can go directly into airbrush. You don't have to do a thinner on them at all. And these can be shipped by mail. So there's examples of manufacturers, of course, the Flowable, which was solvent-based, and the Polyscales, which are water-based. Now, Tamiya, I have some Tamiya as at least 31 years old, and it's just like they're brand new when you open them up. They do last forever. The only downside of it is they have military colors, but no railroad colors. So if you start mixing the colors to get the effect you want, you're going to have a problem in the future if you have to spray again, if you break a part, if you replace a part, or you scratch the surface and you want to cover it up. It's going to be hard to match it again. Now, this is one I like, is the Badger Model Flex. It's still available. They have all the railroad colors. And the nice part of it is the paint jars you use for an airbrush, this is exact size from fit onto those connectors going into the airbrush. Now, if the other types, like these type here, Polyscale, for example, you have to mix it, or stir it and then put it into a paint jar and then attach it to the airbrush. This one here, you can go direct. So you don't leave the film of the paint in the jar when you're done. And after you do that 10 times, like you use a lot of paint, but this way you don't use anything, Anyway, the only difference is this one here, when they first came out originally, you didn't have to use a primer on them either. And they didn't have to thin them at all. And with the EPA a few years ago, they had to change the formula, and pretty much now you do have to use a primer first, and then you do with this one, and you don't have to do a thinner on these ones either. I like them. Vallejo have all kinds of them. All the real colors are available, and so on. And of course the Desters. I don't even know if they're still available. It doesn't matter. But this example is going to talk about masking. So in this case, I sprayed the brick first and masked off all the brick surfaces a couple of days later, and then I was able to spray the brown. Now, I've used these masking fluids in the past. You can get them in art supply stores. You can get them at Michael's, stuff like that. And I don't recommend them. And the reason is that they are difficult and hard to reach places. It's really difficult to get it off again. And you can use a toothpick and roll it up to everything and get it off. But sometimes you can scratch the paint underneath it. So I use masking tape all the time. I usually use painter's tape. And the first thing you can do, this edge here is where it comes off the roll. It's quite ragged. And what I do is make a cut across here. This one has been cut down here first. And then you get a nice, straight, even edge. Good with a new blade. And then you get the width you want. and then put the little pieces if you want, or as long as you want. Or you can buy them in different widths as well. Be wary of automotive pinstriping tape because they get them in different widths, but the adhesive on the back of these things are really strong. They can or probably will pull off the paint underneath them as you take them off. So airbrush spray pressures, you pretty much want to stay in the 20 to 25 pound range. That's pretty much the normal. If you find it's not spraying out that well, you can thin it out a bit with thinners. And then, so like I said before, with an airbrush up to 25 pound pressure, you don't pretty much need more than that. And tips, make sure the water trap is empty before you start. I spray on a scrap first. So if you're doing a material you've never sprayed on before, do a scrap piece on that to make sure that paint's not going to be crazing on the top or causing any kind of issues. And I generally, I pretty much know what my materials are. So I spray on that jug, Jaffex jug I was talking about in the spray booth, spray it on there first. Make sure it's coming out nice spray. If you notice bubbles on the feed jar, the color cup, it means there's an air leak in there. Generally, it's at the tip. And if you're going to be thinner, if you're doing thin paints, then you need to lower the pressure. As I said before, you can use a medium needle, but if you're going to do inks or dyes, because it's so thin, you just lower the air pressure. Make sure you stir the paint. Do not shake the paint, because otherwise you get tiny air bubbles in the paint, and it will splatter as it comes out. If you're going to use a high pressure, I've done up to 35 pounds pressure on some paints, and make sure that whatever you're spraying is fastened down securely. Otherwise, you won't see it again. And a cleanup, you can buy a generic airbrush cleaners. You can buy the manufacturer's airbrush cleaners. Of course, they're more expensive. A lot of them, with the acrylics, you could use methyl hydrate. This is about $2 for a quart, for example. And that's what I use. And that's all it for me. And I'm going to get over to Clark here. You're on.
Okay.
Question?
We're going to do part 2, I hope.
Yes.
Okay, we got to share screen. Sure. Do this. There we go. Oops. Okay. Okay, interesting. There was supposed to be sound for this. Apparently there is no sound.
Yeah, but Clark, you can do the sound. You're good at that.
Yeah, I've got lots of sound. Yeah. No, but I spent like 2 hours recording all the sound over this.
Oh, that sucks. Yeah.
You're telling me.
Clark, when you shared, did you click the little checkbox for sharing sound?
Maybe
you might
not.
start over. Double check.
Sure. We'll share sound. Didn't help.
Oh, well.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to flip over to, well, let's hopefully it won't. Okay. That is weird because this is how we did it before. But okay, you guys will have to listen to me.
I've heard some people say you have to optimize the video or something.
No, the last time when we did it, I just clicked on it and I thought that's how it worked. But we'll go from here. I can do that verbally. It's not a big deal. As long as it doesn't kick in halfway. Okay. Everybody can hear me though.
Yep.
So introduction to spray painting by me. And whoops. Thanks to Bob for part 1. I appreciate all his tips and we work together on this. So just remember, you know, if you find some tips in this clinic and they should be shared, make sure you give credit to the people who have given you the tips. So as Bob's talked about already, equipment preparation, we're going to talk about equipment and preparation of the model, spraying, and a little bit of cleaning. I'm not going to touch decaling or decaling or weathering. So a little planning. So in your area, your painting area, you want to have a comfortable area. You want lighting that's the same as in your layout room or wherever the layout or the models are going to be displayed. You want a backdrop, so in case you do muck up a little bit of paint spray, because sometimes that will happen. You don't want to be painting the fascia on your layout or your wife's drapes or something. Ignition sources. You still have to worry about ignition sources. Bob mentioned about the difference in the acrylic paints, but a lot of the additives we put in acrylic paint still can have an ignition point. So you have to kind of be careful with that. Ventilation and paint boost system, pretty well must. So you want to have all your paints in stock before you start your project. For the beginner, I always say have the correct thinner for your paint. Paper towels for cleanups, and overall be ready. So you want a clean, cheap, dry, continuous air source, as Bob talked about, and a small compressor with a reserve of at least 60 PSI is perfect. You want a regulator to regulate the air source, as Bob talked about, and you want a good hose delivery system so it won't cause leaks. The airbrush. So for modeling, an airbrush is not really an artist's tool. It is a miniature spray gun capable of atomizing paint to very small particles for spraying your models. And of course, the spray paint removes harmful vapor, and it also reduces those atomized paint particles from landing on the model when it really shouldn't. A light source, as I said, you got to have a good bright light source to get even painting. And it should, again, be the same as where the models will be seen. As Bob went over, you have external mix and internal mix. And, you know, everybody says, hey, Clark, what airbrush should I get? Well, that's like asking a Chevy truck guy, what truck should you buy? And then the Ford guy says something, and then the Ram guy said, it's really a personal thing. I find it's how does that airbrush fit in my hand? And how do I feel comfortable with it? Now, I like the Badger 175 because it's fairly heavy, but I do love some of the Iwata products as well. Now, plastic models, you got to wash them a little bit and clean them of the mold release and your hand, the oils from your hand. That can be a big issue, and you'll see that show up even just on a boxcar or something. So just wash them in soap, and you have to be careful. Yes, there's little parts and stuff, so just let them air dry, it'll be fine. Wood models, well, I like to paint all my wood stuff, and as Rick's and Maureen showed you tonight, they stain their wood before even assembling it. And I do the same thing with all my wood models. I basically take a little steel wool, clean them up. If I'm going to use a lot of acrylic paint on them, I will spray them first with a Krylon clear, and that will prevent the wood from the acrylic paint absorbing into the wood and maybe warping it. And then I try and handle the model as less as I can. Now, you're going to say, well, how are you going to do that when you're assembling it? But just try and keep your handling to a minimum. Keep your oils off the model. So chemistry class, woohoo. So there's a guy called the Grumpy Modeler. I mean, I should have had that handle. And this guy's been around for a while, and he makes an acrylic cleaner and a thinner. And so he should get the credit for his formulas. You get graduated squeeze bottles. These are 250 milliliter bottles from Amazon. And for the thinner, now I call it the Big Kahuna thinner for me. but it's actually the Grumpy Modeler's formula. So 175 mil of distilled water, 75 of isopropyl alcohol, and then 10 to 15 drops of glycerin. You can buy all of those products at the pharmacy. And then the cleaner, use 100 mil of Windex. Now, the real trick with the Windex is to make sure it's got ammonia in it, because that ammonia is what really activates the cleaning process. Then 150 distilled water, the alcohol, and 10 drops of glycerin. All right. And then I added some labels, and we're all set to go. So the bluish one, of course, has got the Windex in it, and the other one's the thinner. Now, not all paints will react well with thinners, especially homemade brews. So you have to test them ahead a little bit of time. If you find it curdles like cottage cheese, it's not the right thinner for that paint. So you can use distilled water, windshield washer fluid. And by the way, if you get the winter stuff, you can airbrush to -40. Let's see. Sure, somebody's phoning me. Paint choice today is wide open. I can't really tell you what paint to buy, because right now paint is so hard to get in many areas. And so a lot of guys are not getting to be able to use their own paint that they prefer. But there's tons out there, as Bob went over them. There's the AK, the Tamiya. Now, Tamiya is not necessarily a true acrylic. It is kind of a hybrid, in my opinion, because you cannot thin it with water. All right, there's 3 variables in painting. And if you learn nothing but learn this, you've done a big step in airbrushing. Pressure, paint thickness, distance from the surface of the model to the airbrush. All right. If you change the pressure, you may have to change the paint thickness or the distance from the model. So any one of those 3 you change, the other 2 have to be adjusted. So, and paints have to be really mixed well. And Bob went over this, especially like the craft paints. You have to really mix those well to get a smooth surface. So you want to adjust the air pressure using your regulator. Now, I airbrush at a fairly high level. Now, I have this because when I was living in a basically an apartment building, I couldn't have one of the big compressors, even though I do have one. So I have this, and it's very quiet, but I don't have any reservoir on it. So the longer your hose is, the better off you are, because that becomes the reservoir. Now, everybody says, what is the exact formula? How do I measure my paint? What's the distance from the model? I can't give you that. I just can't give you, because every airbrush environment is slightly different. Humidity plays a big thing in it. Paint types, skills of the painter involved, the type of airbrush. That all comes into play. So you really have to practice. Now, when you're starting spraying, this is very important. You never start on the model. You always start off the model and go across the model in a slow, steady motion. And stop spraying once you get past the model. Now, this is the airbrush I'm using. And I hope this video is going to show, but we'll see. I hope that there's going to be sound on it. All right. All right. In this little video tip we're trying to give you on airbrushing. Now, normally this wouldn't be the setup. You'd have a true ventilation system with a full paint booth, but for this example, I'm just using a box and a little bit of protection to protect the area where I'm spraying. Now, for our paint today that we're going to use basic craft paint, as I call it, the Big Kahuna acrylic thinner, and you just pour some paint into the mixing cup. I like to mix it separately first, and then a little bit of thinner, And that ratio, I can't really tell you. It depends on how old your paint is and so forth. And then I like to mix it up thoroughly and make sure it's mixed. Now, you have to watch with thinners. Not all paints and thinners go together. If you see it start to separate like curdled milk, you know you're in trouble. Don't use it, obviously. Now, so I've thinned out the paint to what I believe, but just a little bit thinner than a milky consistency is usually works. And I'll pour it back into my glass container and give it a little stir again. Take off the excess, put our glass top on. So now the paint's basically ready to spray. Now, if you're just starting out, buy some paint, a black or a brown or something that you can see. Cut up some pieces of cardboard, and you're going to start to apply the paint. Now, this is a double action airbrush, so as we push down on the plunger, we just get air. We don't get any paint, and that's a huge advantage to a single action brush, which would, when you push down, you'd get paint instantly. So with this, you get no paint. The reason why you want to practice this, it's like any good tool, especially in airbrushing, you have to learn a little bit of patience. You have to learn a little bit of technique. Now, whenever you're starting to spray, if this is the model, you never spray on the model first. You always start off the model and pull across. Now, I haven't put any paint on. So you're going to, again, start off the model and apply the paint. And notice, I'm hardly ever putting any paint on there. You don't want to do this. All right, it just runs. You, especially on plastic with this acrylic paint, it'll just bubble up and run. So you want to make sure you start off the model, apply a light coat. And if you can see, I'm not doing this. I am taking my whole hand and moving across the surface. Now you can see I'm building up a coat. And that's what you want to do. The nice thing about a double action brush is that if you want to dry it a bit, you can. Whereas like here, when we made all this mess, you can at least move the paint around a little bit and dry it before it creates a lot of runs. But if you do it properly, you won't have any runs. Now, as I mentioned in the slide presentation, you have three factors. You have the amount of air, pressure, you have the distance from the model that you're spraying, and the consistency or the thickness of the paint. If you change one of those, it will change the other two factors. So if the paint was really, really thick, I turned up the pressure, and I may have to get closer to the model to get the coverage. Now, if it's really thin, I may want to come back from a model and apply the paint and turn down my pressure. So if you, I can't give you a formula, as I said in the slides. You have to experiment for each of your setups. So again, never start on the model. Always start off the model. Just go slowly. And you want to build up those coats. Here's a piece of styrene. Now, if I just put it on really heavy, it'll just bubble up and it won't really stick. So, but if I do it lightly, now I'm going to let that dry a little bit by just pushing the air on. Now I'm going to put that second coat on. All right, let it dry. It's a little bit of patience, okay? And again, I'm not starting on the model. I'm starting off the model. All right. A little bit of air. Now, if you see an effect, it's called orange peel, where you get all these really rough surface. It's generally because the paint is not hitting the model wet. You need to have the paint hit the model wet, yet not wet enough that it will run. So again, you just want to gently make a light coat, spray that on. A lot of people make the mistake when they're painting, they want to do this. No. And you'll see, you can even see it here. I don't know if it'll show up in the video, but it starts to bubble up and come away from the plastic. And the reason is because this plastic has got mold release and so forth. Even if you wash it, it still will do that. It's like oil and water, hence the oil and the styrene, the water and the acrylic. But if you make that first coat very light, then what happens is the paint will attach to the styrene, and the paint on top of the second coat will attach to the paint. I know that sounds kind of foolish, but that's what happens. All right? And then you'll get your good coverage. And you can apply air again to the model. So that's really the basic techniques of painting. I could go into probably 3 or 4 hours of actual painting techniques. But Jim said we only have 45 minutes, so that's it. So we'll go back to the slide presentation. We're going to talk about a couple other things. But as far as the live demo, that's kind of how airbrushing is. Now, on wood, you want to do the same thing. You want to put that very fine coat on first. On plastic, it's especially important. And in metal, it's also important too. So you have to a little bit know the subject matter of what you're painting and the prep for it, as I said in the slides, as well as the prep for the paint. But this cheap craft paint works really well, believe it or not, if you use the right mixture, the right pressure, and the right paint consistency. You'll get it to work for you. All right. Oh, one tip. A lot of people with any kind of airbrush tend to do this. Tend to hit that trigger and do this. That's not what you want. And it takes a little bit of practice. You want put air and pull it away and move it over the model. You don't want to do this. You know, that's what happens. You want nice. And it takes a little practice. I'm not gonna fool you. But just taking a piece of cardboard, a cheap acrylic paint, spend a little bit of time practicing, and if you can, do small stuff. No, that's a little bit of more paint, but you don't want to get that runny paint so you can blow it away with the thing. But yeah, you can get right up close. You can write your name, foolish things. All right, but practice with it. You want that light coat. Oops. Let's go back one. Okay, so as far as the cleaning of the airbrush, Bob sort of touched on a little bit. You want to run through your cleaners and so forth. Now, every once in a while, you're going to put down that airbrush and walk away. And when you come back, it is going to be rock hard on that piece. When I was working in a hobby shop, a guy came in. He was really mad. He just bought this brand new airbrush. He bought the paint. And 2 days later, he brings it in. He says, this paint is the worst. I can't get it off the airbrush. I said, bring the airbrush in. I'll look after it for you. He says, no, I won't. No, I said, you just bring the airbrush in. So he brought it in, and all they did was get some spick and span cleaning powder, a bottle of ammonia liquid, and the hottest hot water I can get out of the tap. Don't boil the water, just the hot water. And I get about 8 ounces of hot water, about a half a cap of ammonia liquid in there, just enough to smell it, not enough to bring tears to your eyes. and then about a teaspoon of the spick and span, and I mix it up and I drop that whole airbrush in there. And in about 15 minutes, I pull it out and I take a very stiff toothbrush, an old one, not your wife's, and I clean the airbrush, and that paint will just come off. And people are like, how the heck did you do that? And it's a very simple formula that I came up with years ago. And I don't know if specifically if I came up with it or somebody told me about it, but I have been using this for probably 30 years. And it works fantastic. You can put as much acetone, you can put as much methyl hydrate, anything you can think of on those airbrushes, it won't take it off like this. I can guarantee it. So again, just take a small mixing glass, about 8 ounces, fill it up with the hottest hot water, spick and span, 1 cap of ammonia or a little less, and go from there. So you can also use spray cans. Don't be afraid to, if you don't have an airbrush, to not to use spray cans and you want a nice flat surface. You can also use it for scenery. An airbrush is fantastic for scenery. You can use it for coloring in the bottoms of river, which really makes it an easy way to do it. And you get a nice sort of dusted in look rather than a paintbrush look. Here's a river that I did a long time ago. That's my SN3 layout. And you can see how it's feathered in here. I started the tan part in the river, and then I sprayed in some dark green, and you can see how it's feathered in. And then I feathered in some black, which gives you even more depth. And then once you pour the water, it'll look great. So there's the water. You can also, you know, weather cars. This is a car that I've weathered myself using the airbrush. So those are just on a quick overview of an airbrush. And there is many ways to airbrush, as there are modelers. I know Al and I have talked about airbrushing, so have a number of us. But what you have to do is try it and use what works for you. And that's it.
Anybody have any questions for Bob or Clark?
I should have mentioned something before about you can get compressed air or compressed air in cans. The problem with them, after about 20 seconds, it actually freezes the paint after a while, because as air comes out, it really gets cold. So stay away from the compressed cans of air.
Yeah, can I just make a comment? I used to build the spray boost.
I got my hand up.
Yeah, I used to build the spray boosts and stuff, and learned a lot about air spraying and that. Anyway, one of the things you should not do in spray booth is use your big can of spray that you could use your back fence. Don't use that in a spray booth, because you'll plug the filter, and you'll also put a lot of paint onto the vanes of the fan, and then it won't work properly. Yeah, I've seen that happen before, and it's just not a good thing to do.
Yeah, no, spray cans are meant to be outside. Al, you got your hand up?
Yeah, it's just a couple of points. You're talking about mixing paint, different paints, different thinners. There's an old trick that if you try to emulate the consistency of 2% milk, then you can develop a habit of just put it in a dropper and see how it pours. And if it looks like 2% or even 1% milk, that's usually the right consistency to spray.
Yeah.
The other thing I would caution, Roger Malinowski ruined a very good airbrush by using ammonia. Now, Bob earlier mentioned that some of the better quality airbrushes have chrome innards. There are airbrushes out there that still have brass or bronze components inside, and the ammonia will attack that. So
eventually, it will. Yeah.
Yeah, be very careful with ammonia on some airbrushes. It will destroy the airbrush.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's lots of Windex has been a go-to thinner for acrylic paints for a long time, but there are other windshield cleaners that are very good for thinning acrylic paints that have no ammonia, like Armor All makes one. And actually, the formula for Armor All glass cleaner is almost identical to the Vallejo thinners or Badger thinners. It's almost identical, the formulation. And it has no ammonia.
I think Joe Fugate on his MRH has that formula, and that's what he uses, the Armor All cleaner.
Armor All, yeah, it's almost bang on. So I use that for cleaning. I don't spray a lot of acrylics. I'm a real proponent of spraying lacquers. I don't mind the smell.
Actually, could I? This is Ted Becker. Joe Fugate.
They're coming in at about 500 decibels.
That's okay. How's this?
Little bit.
Joe Fugate has changed his mind about Armor All because Armor All changed its formula. So you might look at some of the recent postings in the last few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, the ammonia is the killer for some airbrushes. It'll destroy the inside of an airbrush.
Yeah.
The other thing you were talking about, Clark, that's really interesting. I've always had a lot of trouble getting paint to stick to styrene. And then I discovered an article that said, number one, it's a good idea to use primers, proper primers, because primers don't have pigment, they have fillers. So they tend to stick a little better.
Right.
And they color a lot easier than paints. But the main reason that paint doesn't like to stick to styrene or acrylic is the surface tension. You know, if you splash water on a mirror or glass, it beads up, and that's the surface tension. So that goes back to your point that if you do a very, very, very fine spray initially, especially on styrene, that breaks the surface tension.
Yeah.
And then the next paint will stick to the initial fine spray paint. If you get it the least little bit too thick, then it just rubs off.
That's why in that thinner that I showed you, that glycerin will help break that surface tension. Now, I know a lot of guys who use Photo Flow, and there's also the actual artist's
Flow Promoter.
Yeah, Flow Promoter, and there's all kinds of them, and that basically is what it's preventing.
Well, I know we've talked a couple of times about some of the new paints, and the armament guys are leaps and bounds ahead of Model Railway as far as paints and finishes go. And even Tamiya now has brought out a whole new line of paints that are lacquer based, the same as the AKs and MIG's all mineral based, but the AK paint, they are all armament colors, so you have to play with it a bit. But they're all lacquer based, and lacquer is always sprayed much nicer than water based or mineral based ones. And it goes back to Floquil. I mean, Floquil always sprayed beautifully, but it was a solvent based paint, but they were using toluene, which is a cancer in a can. So
yeah. Well, we had a mutual friend who used to just take his 4-gallon pail of toluene and dump it all over his hand and go, "Don't worry about it," and expletively. And I think you know who I may be talking about, but
well, that stuff's terrible. That's why they took it off the market.
Oh yeah. Now, as I mentioned, Al and I have talked several times now. Al is almost a professional, like, car painter and stuff, and he likes a trigger handle, and he uses a Grex. I believe you use a Grex, right, Al?
Yeah.
You use a Grex one because you like the trigger action.
Well, and that's because I've used a conventional spray gun, so I've got the whole. You talk to anyone that's done any painting, they talk like this, right?
Yeah.
And it's this action, and I like that on the Grex gun. I could never get the hang of doing this.
Yeah.
So I've been using a Grex airbrush, and you talk about medium. The 0.3 millimeter needle is kind of a medium needle that Iwata and Grex have, and it's ideal for any of the painting that we would do, any models that we do.
Now, and all of you guys who are on, if you're on the Zoom call, you should chime into the chat, hit the chat, and it should come up on the side. And the reason is because we do talk about stuff as the clinics are going on or people ask questions, and it's good to have your chat on if you're not familiar with it. But thanks, Al, for that. And Bob, thank you for helping me out.
Wait a minute, guys. I got 2 questions for you.
Go ahead, caller.
Clark, Bob. For a beginner, what airbrush would you recommend?
Did you not watch the Slide Chevy guy? Well, you know, everybody's got their own personal. I like the Badger 175 or even some of their Patriot ones. I think it's called a 105. They're kind of like a general airbrush. Now, Bob, you like what do you like your Iwata, which is a very good brush.
Iwata. I also have a harder Steenbach as well, but they're $550, but which isn't bad if you say it fast.
Yeah.
But stay away from used brushes, like somebody advertising on eBay used airbrush. I stay away from them. You get rid of them for some reason.
Yeah.
I use Pache.
My next question is, do you recommend for a beginner again, the single or the double function airbrush?
Double.
To me, it's a double.
And why?
Well, I know Al's having a laugh at it, but I like the double because I think once you practice it, you can do, in my view, I think you can do a lot more with it as far as weathering and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, Al may disagree, but I think for the average guy, I think a double action is way better.
I disagree, but anyway.
I know.
I think if you've never
Al, why do you disagree, Al?
Well, because you're trying to do 2 things at once, and it's a coordination. It's like rubbing your stomach and patting your head or chewing gum or something at the same time. If you get a lot of the double action airbrushes the guys have been mentioning, you can adjust the stop so that you can turn a double action airbrush into a single action airbrush, because you can limit. If you look at this, you're trying to do this and this at the same time. Now, if you've never used an airbrush before, you're going to get very inconsistent amount of paint and the ratio between the paint and the air, because you're trying to do 2 things at once. So some of the good double action airbrushes, you can adjust the back so that as you're pulling the paint trigger back, it hits a stop. You've turned that double action into a single action airbrush, because now all you're doing is controlling the air. That'll let you learn how to paint. You can get a very inexpensive single action airbrush. Some of the things that Clark mentioned are key. Number 1 is to keep the paint distance from what you're painting parallel and the same distance. So if you're going to paint something you've got a paint distance that's 6 inches away from your paint surface, you want that consistently 6 inches, and you want the angle of the airbrush and the paint to stay at 90 degrees on and off the material. Well, for a rank beginner that's never used an airbrush before, that in itself is a bit of a challenge. So if you're now trying to control the amount of air and the amount of paint at the same time, there's a lot going on. Once you've done it for a little while, then you can start finessing, you can start feathering, you can start weathering, you can start shading by controlling the amount of paint and air with this little finger. Now, I know some of the guys here have mentioned the Grex, and they're one of the best airbrushes on the market. They're single action.
Could you guys also, if you're going to have this discussion, talk about the differences in cleaning afterwards between a single and double?
Well, it's more of an external versus internal. Internal is, I usually will just run through the cleaner through it. and blow it out, and usually it's good to go for the next time. Now
you can with a roll of paper towel and backwashing and airbrush. I've got airbrushes that I've never taken apart in 5 years. I've never had to clean them, because you can clean them just by plugging the needle and backwashing it and spraying it out with some thinner and wiping it down with a piece of paper towel.
I usually go 2 to 3 paint jobs before, and then I just take it apart, and it takes me 5 minutes to take it apart, clean it, and put it back together.
One of the workhorses of the model railways was the Pache Model H.
Yeah.
Which I still have one I use for doing scenery and things, and that's a single action airbrush with a little siphon cup on the side. Excellent brush to learn with.
Yeah.
One of the other points I would put out there, especially for a beginner, you also have to learn how to mix your paint to the consistency to spray it. So it's almost better to start with a single action, get your experience on getting your paint to the sprayability point. And of course, single action brush is a little easier to clean than a double action.
Yeah, for sure.
And, then after you get the ability to get your paint where you need it, then you can look at going into a double action. And actually that Grex trigger pull is a double action. You first start to pull it, you get air only. As you come back farther, you start to engage paint.
Yeah, but the amount of air doesn't change.
No, it doesn't.
we could have a half-hour discussion about whether it's a single action or a double action. Once you've activated the gun, the air pressure doesn't change when you get to the paint.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What I hear you say, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you guys in effect saying is if I'm a new model railroader, if I'm a beginner model railroader, and I'm trying to learn how to build models, I'm trying to learn how to paint models, I'm trying to learn all of these different things, I'd be better off trying to start with a single action spray gun, as cheap as I can possibly get one.
Yeah, I wouldn't go cheap.
No, I wouldn't go cheap.
I would go at least a Badger 350.
How much is that going to, how much would that cost me?
I don't know what the prices are now. I think they might be around $50.
Okay.
For an actual Badger. Harbor Freight has one that looks just like a Badger, but I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah. If you go on, I think it's US, what is it? Airbrush USA or something in the States.
Yeah.
You go on that, they sell probably 5 or 6 different types of manufacturers' brushes, even though it's owned by Badger.
And so therefore, one of those at that site.
Problem.
What?
Go ahead.
The problem with the single action brush is it's very difficult to use acrylics with it. You're using acrylic with a single action brush, the paint evaporates right at the nozzle of the airbrush.
Okay, Badger has a product, and it's Badger spelled backwards. I don't know how the hell you pronounce it. And what it is, it's called a needle juice. And you can use it either on the needle or you can use it on the funnel part of a double or single action brush. And that keeps the acrylic paint from sticking to the metal. I use it entirely on, every time I use the airbrush I bring out, I put a little bit in. But every 3rd or 4th paint job, I take the brush apart, do a light cleaning, put the needle juice all over it, put it back together and start going. That's one thing that really helps with acrylic paints.
Hey, Jim, just a little tip I found out a couple, 3 years ago. Once a year, the guy that is president of Badger puts out a special where you can buy airbrushes for the price equal to his age. So I got my, I don't think he did it this year. I think they just did discounts because of COVID and they probably didn't sell a lot, but.
Problem is he's 104 this year.
Actually, I know Ken very well, and
actually,
I've worked with Ken at many NMRA shows, helping him do their airbrush clinics, and Ken's a great guy, and he does a Sunday afternoon with Badger. And go on their Facebook site, and he'll tell you. And he gives out sometimes fantastic specials on that little Zoom show. And he's a great guy. So tell him I sent you. You know, 10% more.
He'll give you the Clark discount, double.
That's
price.
right, 20% more.
When I bought mine,
let me revise what I understand now. Here's what I'm hearing now. If I'm a new model, I would go to the Badger website and I would buy a single action Badger spray gun.
Or Pache. Pache makes a good single.
Yes.
I like Pache.
Pache makes it, and they're cheap. They're, I don't know, 50 bucks.
They're not much more.
Okay, so it's Badger or Pache, right?
Yep.
And the nice thing about the Pache, the cheap one, Model H, I believe it is you can get 3 different nozzles with it.
Yeah,
and
it comes with the one,
you can paint that
0.1, a
super fine
0.2
line, or you can paint an 1.5 bar if you want. So, yeah, and that's on the single action one. So they're really sweet. They're good. They're a good airbrush. That's
so look at both of those. Pick the one that you like from those two. Either one of them, single action, and then concentrate once you have that on mixing your paint and getting the proper paint consistency to where you're comfortable that the paint that you're going to spray is the consistency and everything that you need to have. Therefore, the only 2 variables you have left then is the air coming in, the strength of the air coming in, and the distance away from the model. Is that right?
Yeah, that's close. You have to realize that
there you go.
Painting is almost a hobby to itself.
Yeah.
There's a Pache, which is probably, I hate to admit it, but 40 years old.
Yeah,
and it's
Model H.
It's a Model H. I think I probably paid about 35 bucks for this. It has a, the trigger is on and off, all right?
Yep.
So you regulate your air pressure from your compressor. You can fine tune the spray manually at the front here. There's 3 interchangeable needles. Can you guys see this all right?
Yeah, it's a little.
As the other gentleman mentioned, these come with 3 needles, a 0.1, a 0.2, and a 0.3 millimeter needle. They're very easy to change. It's got a little siphon cup that it comes with, but they also, you can put a jar on with a little spigot on it. You can get one of these, or the what was the other one you just mentioned? The black one.
Oh, the Patriot?
That's right.
No, the Model 350.
Yeah, the Model 350. I had one of those. I had one of those too, and it's a single action brush. You can paint for a beginner. All you got to do is get your consistency, get your 2% milk consistency paint, put it in the cup, adjust a little bit of an adjustment to what you want, whether you're doing a side of a box car or a set of trucks or something. And then all you got to do is on and off on the air. And then you can concentrate on the other things like you mentioned, Jim, the distance from the paint, the consistency, the speed that you're moving wants to be the same so you don't get more paint or less paint. Learn how to do that with something very simple like a little button, and then progress to some of the more sophisticated. You can spend several $100s. The Thayer Chandler, beautiful airbrushes, but they're designed for artists. They're designed for spraying inks.
But I think that's also the point too, Al, is that if a new guy's going to get into it, you really need multiple brushes. Like I've got, I don't know how many.
Oh, but, for sure, Clark. But we're talking about someone that just wants to learn how to spray a box car.
I guess
this is all you need.
Yeah, I was
initially
sort of giving the guy the option of going a little better, and then you don't have to buy another one.
Yeah.
Well, first you need one that you can learn with, and the single action, especially like that Pache or that Badger 350, to me is the easiest. I painted for probably 20 years with those.
Yeah, this is an antique, this one.
Yeah.
I got the guy holding it.
Shut up.
I hate to say this, but Al, I understand what you're saying about that because I use mine like that today. And that's the only one that I've ever used.
Yeah. They work fine.
Only one I've ever used.
Chevy Cadillac.
But, you know, I'm not a professional sprayer either. You know, it's part of the hobby to me. So,
well,
you know, go ahead.
That's also the point. I mean, it's the same thing as, you know, trying to learn all this media to take a damn video. You know, that's not the hobby to me. It's, you know. So
exactly. And I understand what Bob is saying. I mean, you know, there are it's a hobby within a hobby almost for some people. I understand that.
Yeah.
But for most of us, it's a tool. It's like any other tool that I have. I use it for specific purpose and then put it away.
Right.
I'm trying my work my way up to body painting. That's a new hobby I'm going to take.
I got to see that when that happens.
Hey, I'm coming down. Can you get a 45-gallon drum?
I want Clark to be the person that you practice on.
Oh no!
On some cases we start with a roller, right?
All right. Hey guys, thank you so much for tonight. And you know, you've heard me talk about if you've got a question, ask a question, and we'll try to get somebody to answer it. You've heard tonight the answer for a modeler's question about how I use my new spray gun that my wife gave me for Christmas. That was his question. And I think you got some great advice and from some very talented people who know an awful lot about spraying with spray guns. So I hope this answered your question. Thank you so much for taking the time to write to me and ask the question. And Clark and Bob, thank you so much for putting together the presentations for us. I really do appreciate all of it.
No problem. And we'll talk after. Yeah, great. And thanks, Bob.
Yepper.
Now, let me go back over one more time the winner of the door prize tonight. His name is CP Rail numeric 1. CP Rail, RAIL numeric 1. If you will send me an email to Jim Kellow1, JIMKELLOW 1 numeric 1 at gmail.com and include this code for tonight's show. And the code is RDPE91. R is in Ralph, D is in dog, P is in Peter, E is in eat, 91. And also include your whole name, your full name, and your mailing address. And you'll send that to me by email using the email that you subscribe to our website with. Then David Rarick will mail you the HO scale engine house out of card that he built on the show. And I wish you the best of luck. You have 24 hours to get me that email. If after that I don't get it, then you forfeited the prize and it's over with. In the event that CP Rail 1 does not get me the email within 24 hours, then on the next show, next Wednesday, this model will be offered to a person who is on the show next Wednesday. Not a subscriber. It can be a subscriber, or it can just be a person who is a friend of a subscriber and was given the login information. It is going to go to a person who is either on the Zoom Live or the YouTube Live next Wednesday. And the first person, after I have identified the code that will be used next Wednesday, it'll be a different one from the one for tonight. for CP Rail 1. If you'll send me an email just with that code in it, then that person will be the winner of the card model that David built. So it will be awarded either tonight to CP Rail 1 or next Wednesday to a person that's on the show who actually wants it badly enough to take the time to immediately send me an email on the show that night. In the future, I'm kind of inclined to discontinue the door prizes as we've been doing them in the past. The reason being, I just don't seem to be getting the people that are subscribers that are hearing about it or live on the shows the night I announce the door prize, and the door prizes aren't being taken advantage of. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is open the door prizes in the future to only people that are on the show. You have to be a subscriber to get the login information for the show, or you have to be a friend of a subscriber that subscriber gave the login information to for that night, and you just got lucky and attended that night's show. One person on that show will be a winner of the door prize for that particular show. And what I'm going to do, instead of going out and soliciting door prizes from manufacturers, I'm going to allow the manufacturers to tell me that they want to do a door prize. If I don't hear from any manufacturers that they want to do a door prize, then I won't do door prizes anymore. If the manufacturer wants to do a door prize in the future on one of our shows, I will provide the manufacturer 5 minutes of time to talk about his company, his product, whatever he wants to talk about, as long as that manufacturer then has a door prize. The door prize can be a model that the manufacturer produces. The door prize can be a % off the model cost that the manufacturer produces. I will leave the amount of the door prize up to each manufacturer. But since we're not doing any longer the What's New segment that Greg Cassidy used to do, this will allow the manufacturers to have access to the show, therefore to you, the viewer, both viewing the show now as well as the people that will view the show later by video on YouTube channel. So they'll have that opportunity, and the cost to them will be whatever the door prize is that they're prepared to offer. I'm going to limit this to 2 manufacturers per show. Like I say, I may not get any manufacturers that take me up on this, and that's fine. If they don't want to, then I'm not going to go out and solicit them. I don't feel that that's the right thing to do. I've tried to produce train shows. We did 3 of them, and I thought were very successful. But it was very, very difficult work. I don't mind saying that. It's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not planning to get back involved with that kind of a situation again. I learned my lesson with the train shows. So what I'm going to do is allow the manufacturers, if they want to let me know that they want to do a door prize. They get 5 minutes of time to talk about their companies, whatever they would like to talk about. And the door prize is up to them, whatever they want to offer as the door prize. And the people eligible to win will be the people on the show that night. And it'll be a question of the first person that calls or emails that manufacturer directly, that is the winner of the prize. And the manufacturer and the model winner will be dealing directly on the show that night. So with that said, our next show is a week from now because we're not able to do them on Saturday any longer. And I went into that last show. So September the 8th will be our next show. Rick and Marie Hunter will be back for their next segment on their 81-foot trestle. Bob Farquhar will be back doing 20 basics of electronics. This will be Electronics 101. And then Steve Wolcott, who owns Precise Model Specialties, will be our featured modeler. Steve is also a cattle rancher and awfully nice guy, and I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from him. So if you're new to the show, please go to our website and subscribe. Our website is New Tracks Modeling. Subscribe and you'll get the login information for our future shows and find out what we're up to. And thank you so much for being here tonight. And I hope to hear from CP Rail Numeric 1 before the 24 hours is over. Thanks again.